Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Alexander, we've been in many, many meetings together, but I have to tell you, your robust support of your staff and your calling them patriots, I felt implied that someone was saying that the people who worked for the NSA were impugned as not being patriots and not working hard. And I have to tell you that I have never heard that. I think people have questioned the policies of the NSA. I think the policies that you carry out have certainly been questioned, and they have been carried out by patriots, as evidenced by the fact that almost a majority of the Congress actually voted to end the surveillance. And I am certain that you're not talking about them as not patriots. The two individuals who wrote, one Republican, one Democrat, one Republican, one Democrat, who wrote the USA Patriot Act shortly after 9/11, have now introduced the USA Freedom Act that essentially would repeal many of the aspects and change them of the Patriot Act. There has been some diminution of our diplomatic relationships across the world, naive or not, disingenuous even or not. That is just a fact. And it seems to me that now with the president saying it looks like he's poised, it says in the New York Times, to order the National Security Agency to stop eavesdropping on leaders of American allies. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee raised a question that I think is legitimate, an issue that's legitimate. Why did we not know that heads of state were being eavesdropped on, spied on? The reason why it's important is because it is a policy issue that has very broad implications. It could put the United States in a difficult position. I understand that sources, methods, all those things, but we are the Intelligence Committee, and we didn't know that. And now all of us are dealing with a problem in our international relations. There will be changes. What I heard from you was a robust defense, effectively, of the status quo. That isn't necessarily what I've heard in other hearings. I have heard your openness, and I heard, Mr. Inglis, the 4 different ways that we would measure how we use this metadata. But I think that we have to move on that. I think that that people who are concerned about this, and that's a lot of patriots, feel that this has to be, that this must be changed. So I have a couple of questions. What about having an official outside of the NSA to provide prior approval of what would be reasonable, articulable suspicion in order to query a name and ask for that information?
If I could, let me just address, because my intent was not to say that anyone here in Congress or anyone else was less noble. My intent actually in that discussion about NSA was to let you know what I see in the people who are executing these responsibilities, that we have challenged them. It was meant as nothing against anyone else. I feel I have a responsibility to stand up for them. You know most of these people. That's part one. 2.
But that again implies that they need to be stood up for.
It does.
No one has suggested that the loyal and patriotic employees of the NSA are the problem. You can take responsibility, but they don't need to take responsibility.
Well, so I think this is where, perhaps in a discussion, from my perception, I don't read all the newspapers, but some of the stuff that comes out sure looks that way. So I just want you to know where I sit on this, and it's not to impugn anyone else, but it's to tell you I think we're doing the right things. Now, in that, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't change. Let me be also clear that in this area, I think some of our partnerships are absolutely vital to this country, and we need to ensure that we balance those partnerships. So I agree with you 100% on looking at that. That's a policy decision, and I do think that we ought to look at that. These are things that we ought to look with our allies, because it takes allies. Where we are today in counterterrorism and cyber, it's going to take allies. But I want to be crystal clear that for our people, at least you know, and you've met these, you've helped set this up. To answer your real question, help set up the compliance program. So to answer your real question, the issue that I see is we tried that back a couple of years ago with the court, and it got up to 9 days, and the court gave us back that authority to do it. I would propose a counteroffer where everyone that we do is within 48, 96 hours we send to the court, and if we make a mistake or something they disagree with, have a way of doing that so that we meet the timelines that you need, or as Chris mentioned, for some of these operations where time is of the essence. And I used the Najibullah Zazi case where this was a 1 week, and you can't afford that. So I would say we would absolutely be willing to work with you on something along those lines or with the committee.
Is my time up?
Your time has expired. I'll allow one question. We had some technical difficulty on the clock. I'll give you one more question.
Okay. Let me ask a short question.
For logistics, I'll try to give members a 30-second notice on their time. Thank you.
Okay. A short question. Currently, the NSA is holding for 5 years the business record data. Many people have suggested that's too long. 2 or 3 years? What do you think about a time, whether NSA holds it or some other entity holds it?
Our analysts think that somewhere around 3 years is probably the least that you could do. And so if we did that, it goes back to what Congressman Ruppersberger said. I think 3 years makes sense. That's what our analysts have come up with.
Thank you. I yield back.